OPEC is having a potential supply shock for oil, all while major geopolitical conflicts are going on between the United States and our buddies Russia, where India is in between it all. And Donald Trump is now calling for lower oil prices, like his call would essentially drop the price. Now, OPEC is at odds with all of this, and we're going to get into all of that. But first, let's get into the potential of this supply shock from the oil field, because OPEC's new supply shock will lock in the oil market's return to surplus. The latest oil supply shockwave unleashed by OPEC's Plus is set to swell a surplus last year, pressuring prices from producers world over while answering to U.S. Donald Trump calls for lower costs. For now, the market remains tight, but there are rising risks like ongoing trade tensions, implying that the market could look less tight in the coming 6 to 12 months, which would pose some downside risk to prices. Now, with all of this, right, this is what basically has been at the center of everything, is that the U.S. has been essentially at odds with almost everybody at this point. They have trade tensions with China, with Russia, with everybody. And so now oil is getting in between it. And as we know, it's not just money that makes the world go around, it's energy as well. So OPEC Plus making another large oil output hike is now in an attempt to continue to gain market share for the oil industry. So now 8 countries hike September outputs by over half a million barrels per day, and oil supported by U.S. demands for India to stop buying Russian oil. So we'll see, but OPEC plus 8 might start or may consider returning to more supply on September 7th. So this month is going to be very, very interesting, because essentially the oil market has been working at a deficit for quite some time, and they essentially drained everything not too long ago. And of course, Trump has had the new motto, let's call it, of drill, baby, drill, trying to get as much oil as possible for all of this. So now we're starting to see, some of the, I guess, OPEC countries start to clap back in a sense, where now this could potentially affect the oil price and the amount of oil that we have circulating. But all of this isn't necessary to make sure that everything is moving back and forth. And so this move marks a full and early reversal of OPEC plus largest tranche of output cuts, plus a separate increase in input from the UAE, amounting to 2.5 BPD, or about 2.4% of the world's demand. That is absolutely huge, right? When you're seeing a reversal of decision change about 2.5%, that's a pretty significant move for just one stroke of the pen, folks, for things to change and open up like this. So now, 8 OPEC Plus members held a brief meeting amid increasing U.S. pressure on India to halt Russian oil prices. Now, don't forget, India is one of the most populated countries in the world, right? So they use a good bit amount of oil, even though it's not one of the top, 5 GDPs in the world. India, because of its massive amounts of population, is always going to need a ton of energy. And so the U.S. trying to step in and say, hey, stop. Well, that's going to affect the U.S. crude oil prices. Look at how it's been, kind of trailing down here. We've got it at $70 a barrel at the end of July. And everybody are saying, hey, this could spark crude oil prices to touch 80 per barrel. So now that's like a 12 to 13% increase right from the jump, just because of these trade tensions that we have going on. So crude oil are expected to rise already, right? They're anticipating this to already spike up because the U.S. and Russia threaten to disrupt the global oil supply chain. Now, it may face upward pressures as geopolitical risks rise. Now, this is the interesting thing about oil, folks. You have to remember, because oil is at the center of everything, they even, say that the petrodollar was essentially the reign of the United States dollar. When that started to come to life, well, everything started to go through the dollar, right? Well, that is true, but at the same time, if you look at how oil is interacted, the pricing of everything, it's all about the geopolitical conflicts that we have going on. I mean, the US was overseas in a war in the Middle East for God knows how long for oil, and it continues to always go. I mean, this is what makes the world go round, right? So these geopolitical conflicts send oil skyrocketing left and right and left and right. And you have to be very cautious with all of this, because now the year end of 2025 could end at 80 to 82. President Trump has given Russia a deadline of 10 to 12 days to end the war in Ukraine, failing which it runs an additional risk of sanctions and secondary tariffs of 100% on countries trading with Russia, which would push oil prices higher. Now, the interesting thing of this is that the sanctions didn't work in the first place, folks. I mean, there was rumors that Russia was using Bitcoin to get around the sanctions earlier, but let's face it, if the BRICS nations produce majority of the oil in the world, well, you could put all the sanctions you want, but people are going to need that energy. So these sanctions never have really been affected. And the tariffs, well, Trump has been waffling on those for quite a bit. So if he's waffling on the tariffs, and then on top of that, we've got, countries that are in dire need of oil, well, I don't think that we're going to see, this massive amounts of spikes up like we are seeing. And this move by President Trump could increase oil prices as countries dependent on Russia crude would face a difficult choice between buying cheaper oil and facing heavy export tariffs on the U.S. And the ironic part is that I would love to bet that majority of these exports to the U.S., they need the Russian oil to then power the ships and everything else, the planes, whatever they're doing to export towards the United States, right? So they're stuck between a rock and a hard place, and everything would need to, increase at then. So experts said that this could disrupt the oil market, and a supply shock may reduce from reduced spare production capacity, which is likely to push oil prices higher through 2026. So that's not just me saying that, right? Oil prices are looked for weekly gains. Brent crude oil on US EU trade deal, right? With all of this, you guys got to remember, like, Trump had a trade deal with China in place. They paused it. And then what did they do when the deadline has come up? They paused it again. They're going to keep just putting these things off. And I don't really feel like a resolution is clearly in sight. And make sure you guys are hitting that subscribe button too, and that like button while you guys are here. I know that 90% of you guys are not subscribed, so help me get to that 1K. I'm pushing on 300, so help me at least pass 300 within this week. And oil prices posted a mixed but generally upward trend this week, driven by unexpected changes in supply data, a series of high-level trade developments. And the benchmark is at 70, but they think it could get to 80. And let's face it, oh my goodness, look at the likelihood to cut interest rates. It's all the way at 89, nearly 90%. Right? So if it's nearly 90% chance that we're going to cut interest rates, well, looky here. We're going to have some drastic moves in all markets, right? When global liquidity goes up, and that's essentially what this would do, is this would add to the global liquidity supply, just money circulating in the market. Once that happens, the prices of everything are going to go up, including oil. McLovin in the chat saying, I'd love to see a mandate to transact in Bitcoin for oil. man, we would see if that actually happens. I kind of doubt it, unfortunately, at least in the near future. Because, I mean, if you look at it, right, I mean, we saw the Dixie crash. It was crashing 2%, but the Dixie went down. We saw it like 2 days ago. It was at over 100. Then I did a live stream yesterday on the dollar, essentially just crashing, and now we're sitting at 98. I mean, the Dixie is pretty volatile for, a currency, but not quite as volatile as, let's say, Bitcoin as of right now, because everybody's pricing it in dollar terms. So I don't see the trade happening in Bitcoin anytime soon, but there is some interesting points there. And I wouldn't be surprised, especially with the sanctions, if we see some rumors of Russia potentially utilizing Bitcoin. And maybe I'll do a live stream on that because, hey, could this decision by Trump be the thing that pushes it over the edge? I don't know. And the S&P 500 after hours here, we're seeing it down 1.6%. this weekend. So, it is interesting that we're seeing the dollar weaken so quickly. And it definitely is something that we need to keep our eye on with everything going forward. Especially with what we see here, right? The trade tensions that we have between Russia, US, and India, right? These things, well, they're insane, right? You got to keep a close eye on them because these trade talks, they essentially, they drive a lot, right? They could cause a huge, huge rift in the overall market. Now, I appreciate all you guys coming in. I got a little surprise for you. So I went to Running with the Bulls in Spain. I hope you guys would want to check out and take a peek into my life a little bit. Go check out this video over here. I did a vlog for Running with the Bulls, went in Barcelona, all because you guys come in and tune in on here. So if you guys keep tuning in, I could keep doing cool stuff as long as you guys keep coming to the live streams. So go check that out. Subscribe to the other channel. Tell a friend to tell a friend and subscribe here as well. And thank you guys all for tuning in to another great live stream, and I'll see you tomorrow.